Dímelo, mi gente. Marcucci here again, bringing another video. And today we have Representative Jacob Wasserburger. He is a representative from Wyoming, Lusk, I think it is, Lusk, Wyoming. I've never
I'm
personally been to, I've never personally been to Wyoming, but I'm excited to go because it's such a crypto hub. From everything that I researched, it's the one of the places to be in the United States for crypto. Anyways, thank you so much for being here, Jacob. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Marco?
Good, good. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we're going to talk about everything from what's going on in Wyoming to the strategic bill that is currently failed. We're going to be talking about that a little bit later, but just a little background for those that do not know about Wyoming. Wyoming has been at the forefront of crypto regulation and innovation. Since 2018, they have had 30 pieces of crypto legislation. Since 2019, 13 laws have been designed for crypto businesses. You guys are also developing, from what I understand, is a stable token that's going to be coming out in Q1. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about yourself, Jacob, and the great state of Wyoming.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. I'm a freshman legislator, so I just recently got elected, and I talked to a guy that lives here in town, and he's a very big Bitcoin guy, and he knew that I had kind of an interest, quite a bit of an interest in investing, and he knew that I also invested in cryptocurrencies as well. Mainly just Bitcoin. I mean, I own a little bit of Ethereum too, but I primarily focus on just owning Bitcoin. And yeah, you said I'm from Lusk, and that is correct. So I grew up in Lusk, Wyoming, but I currently am living here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and so the Capitol building is actually part of the district that I'm representing. And so yeah, my district is actually right here in downtown Cheyenne. But I'm 32 years old, and I'm pretty blessed to be here. I'm just, I'm no one really all that special. I do insurance. Also do forklift operating, and I'm also planning on attending school to learn some more coding and programming. So that's kind of my background, and the bill that I'm running was House Bill 201. That was the state funds investment in Bitcoin bill. And what that bill did, Marco, was it gave the treasurer the option to invest up to 3% of the Wyoming Mineral Permanent Trust funds into Bitcoin, is what that primarily did. It wasn't a mandatory investment, it was just to give him that option to invest into Bitcoin. But it was pretty exciting. I had somebody search it on ChatGPT to see who was the first state to introduce a Bitcoin investment bill or a strategic reserve Bitcoin bill. And if you look it up on ChatGPT, it said it was me, Jacob Wasserburger, and then 10 states immediately followed pursuit after that. So it was pretty cool to, be a part of that history and to be the trailblazer that started this new financial innovation for the country.
No, that's amazing. You are definitely a Bitcoin OG. What made you, start investing in Bitcoin, and why do you think that bill is so necessary for the people in Wyoming?
So what got me started investing in Bitcoin, Marco, was I believe it was back in 2012 when I really first started learning about Bitcoin. And now at that time, I didn't own any Bitcoin, but I had learned about our Federal Reserve banking system that we have here in this country, and how, the way that that works is, in order for us to pay, they print so much money. And the only way, and so with that being the way that it's structured, we're obligated to pay that back to the Federal Reserve Bank over a period of time from the money that's been created and put into the circulation. And every dollar that gets made has a little bit of interest on it that gets paid back to the Federal Reserve. So it became a big concern of mine back in the day, because we had we were experiencing inflation then, and I mean, and now today inflation is far beyond what it was like in 2012. And so that was kind of when I first started learning about Bitcoin. And at that time, I wasn't really investing in it. And I wasn't really pro Bitcoin at that time, but I certainly wasn't against the idea of Bitcoin. And it was very interesting just learning the process of mining it, and and just the fact that there was only so many of them that could be put into circulation. And so that was kind of where my first interest into Bitcoin started. And then I think it was around 2014 to 15, when we saw that halving happen, where we saw it go from like $400 up to $20,000. And I'll never forget when I was in Las Vegas on the strip with my mother, and we saw that there was this restaurant that was accepting Bitcoin or accepting Bitcoin as payment. And I remember telling my mother, because this was back when it was $400 a coin, I said, I think I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. And my mom said, well, I'm not doing that. And so I kind of got discouraged by her doing that. And then it wasn't much longer after that we saw Bitcoin go from 400 to 20,000 a coin. So, and and my mother still remembers that conversation to this day when we were in Vegas. And I told her, I said, I think I need to invest in Bitcoin. So that was kind of where I first started getting interested into Bitcoin and a couple other cryptocurrencies.
Hey, mothers always know best, so don't put the blame on her. Eh,
Yeah.
so you mentioned mining, and you also mentioned you know the peer-to-peer aspect of it. So how would this bill help the energy sector, the financial sector, and also the rural development of Wyoming?
Yeah, very good question, Marco. So the way that this would help our energy sector is, if we were to pass a bill, it would just show a lot of Bitcoin mining companies how friendly we are to the Bitcoin space. So, I mean, it would make it to where companies like CleanSpark and maybe Riot Blockchain would be wanting to come here and build more Bitcoin mining machines. This would actually a bit so. I don't know if you're aware of this, Marco, but Wyoming is a very big coal country. And even though there's been a lot of pushback with the green energy innovation and things like that, Wyoming is still very pro coal. And so, if we were to have passed this, it would have shown how friendly we are to Bitcoin and also to mining Bitcoin. And this would have been a great solution to saving our coal mining industry, in my opinion, Marco, because as far as a Bitcoin miner goes, that they don't really care where the energy is coming from. They just, in order to mine Bitcoin, they need energy. And so this would have been a great solution to saving our coal mining industry, because I know there's some other states that probably don't want our coal, like California is probably a state where, they're not going to be as friendly to coal as we are here. So if we were to do that and have done that, we could rely on our own energy sources to helping also those Bitcoin miners be able to keep doing the production of mining Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is, with how much energy it takes, it's really expensive. Well, coal is still currently your cheapest form of energy for conducting electricity. I think it's at like 6 cents per megawatt kilowatt hour, whereas your wind energy, it's about 30 cents per megawatt kilowatt hour. And wind turbine, and wind energy and things of those nature, it's still subsidized. Coal doesn't need to be subsidized in order to be profitable. And so you could easily argue that that would just be that's a double whammy on our Bitcoin mining industry if they're having to rely on very expensive wind energy. So that's how that would have been efficient for helping our energy industry here in Wyoming. What was some of the other questions you had?
Just the finance sector and kind of like rural development. I mean, when it comes to finance, no, I personally don't think of Wyoming, right? Like when you think about finance, you think about like New York, Boston, Miami. How can Bitcoin help out the financial sector over there? Like attracting, you mentioned Riot, you mentioned CleanSpark. It could attract. I saw Kraken was actually holding. I think you guys did like a symposium, and Kraken was there. So all these big financial players that haven't even being built could go to Wyoming. Do you think it will happen with this bill?
Oh, absolutely. I would think that if we were to have done that, CleanSpark is already building Bitcoin mining machines here in the state of Wyoming. And then we've got a developer who actually is in the legislature now that has some Bitcoin mining operations. But as far as the financial aspect, I think Kraken already has. I'm not entirely sure on this, but I think they already have some type of um, uh, presence here in the state of Wyoming. So with us passing this bill, I do think it would show to a lot of these financial tech companies that we're very friendly to the space and to Bitcoin specifically.
Perfect.
As far as financing goes, as far as why this would, okay, so that was another question you had, was how this would benefit Wyoming, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You answered.
Yeah, so the way that this would have benefited Wyoming, Marco, is if, because I made that my mission to get this state to be the first one to adopt it. And if you look that up on ChatGPT, I think that states it pretty well that I was obviously really um, driven to try and make Wyoming be the first state to adopt it. And the reason why that would have benefited Wyoming so well is because I figured we could get our state to where we have that option to invest in Bitcoin. And then, with the new administration wanting to make the country a strategic Bitcoin reserve, Wyoming could have benefited off of the adoption of the country adopting that. And then, along with these 10 other states and counting, adopting it. If we got that first, Wyoming could have really prospered off of the mass adoption of this country. And so that's how it would have been very, very beneficial to the state of Wyoming.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we see people moving to Americans moving to Portugal or El Salvador or these other countries that is not the US. And I think it's really important for the US to keep those Americans here. But that's another topic for later. Why do you think the bill, what do you think was a failure was? Like, what was the feedback of your colleagues? And if you were to reintroduce the bill, how would it be a little bit different, I think?
So, as far as reintroducing the bill, we have till Friday to submit bills that we're going to pull up for interim committee topic. And so, the way some of the people that I talked to about it, the pushback from the minerals committee basically told me they think what the issue was that there was an education hurdle for understanding what I was trying to do. So the CEO of I believe it was of the investment funds committee, he actually came and testified and he spoke out against the Bitcoin investing bill. Which I mean, here in Wyoming, if you look at our treasurer's like annual earnings report, they do very, very well. So a lot of states, the comparison chart that I gave them was what a lot of states have as far as a rainy day fund goes. And so many states use like short-term interest-bearing bonds with like that are yielding some interest. And so if you look at the Satoshi Nakamoto Action Fund from 2018 to 2024, you can see that the value of the dollar had lost about 25% of its value. So these rainy day funds that had like just an amount of 10 million, they had lost almost $1 million in value from just holding these short-term interest-bearing bonds. So that 3%, that just that measly 3% investment had shown on these rainy day funds that the portfolio was able to outperform the rate of inflation with just a small investment of 3% into the allocated into the investment of Bitcoin. And even on your crashing end of times between 2018 and 2025, that Bitcoin was still keeping up with the rate of inflation. And so I just, I know our treasurer here is very good with money, and I know we have a very smart investing team. But I figure, when you looked at the last 5 years of the average annual rate of return on Bitcoin, it was, last time I checked, it was roughly around 224% average annual rate of return over the course of 5 years. And so that would have been very beneficial because we've done a lot of things to start cutting spending on our budgets here. We've just gave a massive property tax break as one of the bills that we passed. And we've done some other things that are probably going to lower the amount of revenue that the state can get because we're trying to give tax relief to people. And so if Bitcoin, so in Wyoming, the permanent mineral trust funds was about $10 billion. So if he did choose to do 3% into Bitcoin, it'd be about $300 million is what would get allocated to Bitcoin. And over the course of 5 years, off of all the revenue that we'd be losing, it was about close to like $1 billion that 3% allocation would make up for all the losses that we have in revenue off of all the tax breaks that we're trying to give to people. And so I don't know if I answered your question or just went on a bunny trail there, but do you have a follow up question? Uh, so I guess as far as bringing it up as an interim committee, a lot of people thought that we should just make it an allocation of just 1%. So I am pushing back on that though, because of what I just explained with the rainy day funds is 1% in a short term interest bearing bond rainy day fund. It was not outperforming the rate of inflation. So I'm very adamant that we keep it at that 3% allocation.
Yeah, you answered the question perfectly. And I think with government and all these different legislations and bills, it's all about compromise, right? Maybe they don't want the 3% and you don't want the 1%, but you get agree on like 1.5% or 2%, something like that, right? I think that's like that's that's how the government works. That's how it is. It's all about, talking to each other and communicating with each other to resolving stuff ultimately for the taxpayers. And you mentioned the taxpayers. Talk to your taxpayers, talk to the people of Wyoming. How can we manage this risk? Because we've only talked good things about Bitcoin, and me personally, I am a Bitcoin maxi. But Bitcoin has had these huge drawdowns of 85%, 90%, 54%, all these huge drawdowns that if we start investing, that 1%, even though, we say it's 1%, but it's like $100,000 or however much it is, and you see it ultimately go down, how can we manage that risk as a Wyoming, constituent?
Yeah, very good question, Marco. So we currently do have a lot of investments in securities. So there's a lot of investments probably into like blue chip companies. I think when I was looking at the report, one of the bigger holdings that we held in securities was BlackRock, and I mean that might change over the course of the next few years here, but that was a very stable blue chip company. So with the mitigating that risk at just 3%, that was the reason for that 3% allocation, is because on your upside with the volatility from Bitcoin, it can make just about any stock portfolio look very nice. However, on the crashing end of things, um, it's not going to be devastating to a portfolio. Losing 3% of your portfolio is not gonna, it's not gonna break the bank. And so, whoops. Oh, I'm so sorry. I dropped my phone. And so, so with the way that we have it structured here already, I don't see it being a significant risk having just a small 3% allocation. And, I mean, unfortunately for us, we're not just holding our money into short term interest bearing bonds. We're actually doing some uh, things like some of these blue chip stock companies. And I mean, they probably do own some bonds as well. So there already is that that risk management is already set in place for bringing on this very volatile asset such as Bitcoin.
Okay, great. That makes perfect sense. So what do you think is the timeline? Now, you said Friday you have to reintroduce the bill, et cetera, et cetera. How long? Because I know me personally, I do not know, so I want to know. In Boston, from what I heard from Senator Durant, he said it was about 2 to 6 years when it comes to legislation and passing these bills. How long do you think it's going to take in Wyoming? Is it shorter in Wyoming or is it about the same? What do you think?
So Wyoming is one of the fastest moving states as far as legislation goes. We probably have the shortest session out of any other state in the country. I think our session here now, as a freshman, I could be wrong on this. So, I mean, you guys might be able to come back and get me later on this, but I think session is about 40 days out of the year. And then next year, it's going to be an even shorter session. So, we move very quickly to, like, if a bill is going to pass the House and Senate, it moves quite quickly, and then it gets to the governor where he can either sign it or veto the bill. And so I think we could easily get it done. Even after this failed attempt. I heard Texas is moving very quickly to get it done. And so that is a concern of mine. But fortunately, their sessions are probably a little bit longer than ours are here. They also probably have a larger body of House representatives that have to learn about the asset versus here in Wyoming as well. So, with that being said, I do think we still have a very big opportunity to be one of the first states in the country to adopt it, and possibly still the first if we're blessed by our Father in heaven. So,
Amen, amen, Jacob. And listen, you gotta send that state treasurer to my channel so he could learn a little bit about crypto and Bitcoin. We need to bring him here so we could educate him a little bit. And I think that's the main concern of people, just the lack of education. And I think that's going to change in the next couple of years. So I'm not doubting that. Anyways, the last thing I want to talk about is this the Wyoming stable token or stable coin or whatever you guys are planning on doing. I don't know if you could tell me when it's gonna come out. I saw it's coming out in Q1, but I saw something that, people from Wyoming could use that and pay for their coffee. They could pay, I think it was the governor talking. They could pay for their coffee. They could pay for anything that they want. Can you talk a little bit about the development of that coin?
so to be honest with you, I don't have a lot of knowledge of that coin. To my knowledge, it would be a decentralized coin. I do believe they're planning on using like maybe some gold and maybe some other types of assets to give it that financial backing that we don't currently see under our United States dollar. And so I think a lot of people were open to that idea too, that we take our stable token and have Bitcoin as having a small allocation to the value of the stable tokens here. I would be okay with that. I do think that we need to strictly focus on having just an investment into Bitcoin, though. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin starts getting used as a form of money someday in the future. But as of right now, with how volatile it is, it's more than likely going to just kind of be a hedge against inflation, is kind of the way that most people treat it. I'm sure you kind of just buy your Bitcoin and hold on for dear life. And I mean, I actually do use my Bitcoin as a form of payment sometimes. Like if I'm needing to pay my wife to pay her phone bill or something, I usually will send her money in Bitcoin because she's currently not here in the country with me. She's in another country right now. So usually instead of going through like one of the payment systems to send money that way, I'll just put it in a Bitcoin wallet and I send it to her Bitcoin address. So I already do treat it like a form of money. And we don't really have that type of risk of it losing value because she's immediately using it to purchase a transaction. So in that short period of time, we're not really worried about the price fluctuations. But as far as the Wyoming stable token goes, I've been asked by the treasurer to support it, and I can't imagine why I wouldn't support it. The only reason why I might not support it is if it's a centralized currency versus a decentralized currency. If it's a decentralized currency, I can't imagine why we would not support it here in Wyoming. And I wouldn't be opposed to having a small backing of Bitcoin to help it retain the value, and maybe along with an allocation of gold. Um, what's very interesting is, I was telling you earlier about that Satoshi Nakamoto Action Fund. They found that same thing with that study between 2018 and 2024, that they were able to also outperform the rate of inflation with gold. However, it required a 16% allocation to gold. So, I mean, if we were to make and I'll probably be speaking out more on this as it comes to fruition, but if we are going to put some type of sound money behind it, it would make sense to me to have about 7% allocation to gold in that currency, and then 3% allocation going to Bitcoin. And that would honestly, in my opinion, I would argue that would complement each other, because there are a lot of people concerned about the downside of Bitcoin. And so while gold doesn't shoot up in value as quickly as Bitcoin does, on the downside, it's not falling as significantly. So that would help stabilize the coin, giving it that value that gives it the coin some actual value with an actual backing behind it versus just printing money out of thin air. But I'd be happy to do another interview with you, Marco. I honestly don't know a ton about the Wyoming stable token, other than that it's just another fact that this is how friendly we are in the state of Wyoming to the idea of cryptocurrency and blockchain.
No, I mean
We
this.
are starting a
Mhm. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. We are starting a blockchain committee here in Wyoming. And so when we got asked if what committees we wanted to be on, I put that as my first option that I want to be on the blockchain committee. I also requested to be on the investment funds committee as well. So hopefully with if I get both of those committees, hopefully I can have some influence in making Wyoming, yes, hopefully fingers crossed that we can make Wyoming be either the first or one of the first states in the country to adopt this financial innovation.
No, Wyoming as a state is blessed and lucky to have you. I cannot say how much I thank you, Jacob. You've been amazing. You're so knowledgeable, and truly, truly, the people are in good hands with you. I can already tell. Is there any last comments that you want to tell to the great people of Wyoming? Maybe your wife watching, that she's watching this interview. Anything that you want to say related to blockchain, Bitcoin, any upcoming events that people might want to go, or how to get in contact with you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I well, I guess a message to the people that are watching your video and to the people, a message to the state of Wyoming is please reach out to our representatives here and let them know how important it is that we can get this accomplished here in the state of Wyoming because it would truly allow this state to prosper, in my opinion. And as far and I guess that's about the most I've got to say. I don't know a lot of conferences. I've got a good buddy who helped me with getting that bill put together. He would be the guy that would know about these conferences. I honestly don't, unfortunately. But I would certainly be open to learning about some more conferences as time progresses, and I'm sure I'll probably be getting invited to some conferences, especially if I get onto the blockchain committee. So I'd like to thank you for your time, and I appreciate you. And yeah, hopefully I can. Hopefully you can help me get the word out about how important this is. So thank you, Marco.
No, of course, thank you. And hopefully, Wyoming is the first state. Currently, the bill failed, people, but we are gonna work very, very hard to get this bill passed. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Jacob, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.